Hello.
Happy Monday, my old friend.
Hey, bud. What you up to, my friend?
Well, I was thinking about something that you're about to do in just a couple of months from now, a few months from now, 3 months from now, whatever, that I've already done. And I wanted to talk about it, but I want to weave a couple of things into it. You ready for it?
Yeah, man. I'm going to be doing a few things in several months. You better narrow this down. Go ahead, man. Hit me with it.
Well, in 2021, the last part of the year, I turned 50. And I know pretty soon. Pretty soon.
Yeah. Go ahead. Come on. Pick that stick back up and hit me with it a few more times. Go ahead. Let's get it all out. What's there?
I'm going to keep it quiet. Can I tell it?
Go ahead. You tell it, man. Tell it.
My old buddy's about to turn 50. I mean, can you believe that we've lived that long, first off?
Yeah, because, being raised out here in the woods, we got up and it was kind of like, y'all going outside. We don't want to see you again until supper time. So, well, we had discussed the 50 thing before because, you turned 50 before me. You was a little older. And, you threw me under the bus, so I can just automatically throw you under the bus. You turned 50.
Yes,
and, we discussed it. We were talking about, just, hey, that is a milestone, and we had a few discussions, and you thought more about it than I have because, of course, you turned 50 ahead of me. So, what advice you going to give me, man? Come on. It better not be start taking Viagra.
No.
Please.
It ain't got to... That I mean, that may be a good thing. I don't know. It depends on your situation. But I'm gonna tell you this.
Go ahead, buddy.
I mean, this was a big thing for me because first off, as we grew up. Wow, your parents at like 10. Here's your 3-wheeler. We'll see you tomorrow. So and that happened for years and years, and like I never really conceived it. I always heard in school, always people talking about, well, most males never live to be 40. I'm like, oh yeah, that's probably what 30 would be good. Then I got to be 30, and then to be 40, and then I looked up. I'm like, oh goodness, I'm almost 50, and like that was what you're talking about. With me, I was like going, oh, 50. Oh my God, that's 25 times 2. And then I saw this thing, you search for your name, and I pulled up a page, and it said Brad Barfield, approximate age 50. I'm like, what? 50? Because I mean, when you're like 17, you hear 35, you think, oh, that's old. And then you get 35 and you hear 50, and like, I'm a long ways from that. Then you get 50, and then you're talking about retirement thinking. So it's a different world.
Well,
is that?
Ain't that the truth? Well, does it help to think you're only half of half of a century? Does that help you at all? Or maybe you have approached your centennial. I mean, there's your glass half full, half empty. You can say, well, I'm only a centennial old. Or you can go the other way and go, I'm half a century. So, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, it's just hard to believe that we're even that old. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm still, like the other day I thought of the 1997, and if I were back in 1997 instead of in 2022, and I talk about 1987, I'm talking about 1952. So, like, if I was back then, talking about the same amount of distance between now and then, whenever you and I were 16, and goodness gracious, I mean,
I know.
It picked up on you,
Yeah, I remember, it is surreal when you kind of look back like that, especially from the perspectives of, how much has changed through our generations. I mean, you went from, barely having a TV to cable to digital satellite to cell phones to computer to internet. There was so much change that we went from nothing and grew up through it. That, yeah, you know, it's a lot of that. So it's kind of surreal to look back through that and see the time distance from a standpoint of where you're at. You know, and I was saying that because I remember we were in either 10th or 11th grade. Our science teacher, you know, the Mr. Elf, you know who I'm talking about. His name starts with an L.
Yes, sir.
He was making the comment, you know, because we were getting up to the millennia. And he was telling us about when we would be alive in the millennia, you know, that, you know, he would probably live to see it, but he'd be old. And, you know, we were all excited about it. And I remember adding it up thinking then, you know, I would be like, oh, well, I'll be like 30-something years old. And it was just, geez, that seems a long way away. You know, and it was at least, I don't know, 15 years, you know, or something close to it, whatever it was at that time. But I remember even then, you know, we had talked about it. And so now that we're at it and we're 22 years past it, you know, it is a very surreal thing when you realize it. But, you know, I don't guess I look at my age as much as, you know, some do. I mean, you know, I married fairly young, had kids fairly young, and, you know, of course, your situation was totally different. So I don't know if maybe that has a difference. You know, you have, you know, a fairly younger child at 50, you know, and here I am. I mean, you know, I've got grandkids at almost 50. So I kind of wonder if there's some of that difference of the, you know, the 50 meaning some more. I mean, but what about you in your situation and some of the things you've been thinking about with it?
Well, I mean, that could be it, but I also think that it's, well, yeah, because like with me, I was like, at least I was in my early 30s, 33, you know, actually before I ever had a child. And of course, but I had lived a lot of free life. You know, that's like if you live at 33 and you never had a child and you just do what you want to do when you want to do it, it's different, okay? Because like,
right,
time stands still. But when you get children, you have a guidepost to judge your age by, whatever it is, and you kind of know where you're at all the time. But if you don't pay attention, you know, a lot of time can go by quick, and you could just get into a rut. But like, you know, I didn't enjoy. Another way of saying that, I almost buttered it out. But another way of saying that is I didn't really enjoy life until I had children. But once I had children, you know, life changed for me. And that's like, you know, because then I was like, oh, I got a reason to live. These children need me, you know. So, you know, after turning 50, and a lot of people do it with grandchildren, like you're talking about with you. I know I had many a conversation with men and women both who were like just, you know, they grew up in the 90s like I did and you did. And, of course, everybody goes on different trails. But in the 90s, you know, we heard you know, I was in college during Nirvana, and then, you know, I got in my own band. I played music for years, and then I kind of switched over to other things. So, you know, life caught up with me, you know, and then by the time you get old enough to realize that life's important, you hadn't gotten to so many years, and turning 50 makes me realize kind of where I'm at. You know, 30 was great, like I said. 40 was like, oh, you know, and 50, like, wow, I made it. I could, if I take care of myself, I may live a while. I may see things I've never seen before. Right.
Well, and, you know, you almost, I'll say you kind of prove a point. And a lot of what I was trying to say, and I don't know if I got it across right, was, you know, the levels of responsibilities at the different ages. So, you know, we are like the opposite contrast. You know, you partied younger and got responsibility at an older age where you're more, you know, emotionally able for it, et cetera, et cetera. So turning 50 meant more, you know, because you're realizing at 50, maybe you're 50 and you still have a responsibility because of, you know, having kids later in life. Whereas I went the opposite direction. You know, my kids are grown. I've just got grandkids. And so I'm able to maybe enjoy some of what you did in your 30s in my later years. And so, you know, just maybe that's why knowing I'm turning 50, you know, I'm proud of this, and it is surreal, but I don't dwell on it. I don't think about it. You know, no, it's just, you know, a hypothesis and just, you know, discussion type thing. But it's interesting, type thing. But I understand where you're coming from. There is a point that you get to that you realize that, these are the things that are more important than these other things. And you kind of start realizing the shortness in time for certain things, and the other times just slip by. And then when you notice it, it's like, crap, I was not paying attention to this because I was paying attention to working, making the big dollar, doing something, and I missed this, And, hey, you talked about you playing ball with your boy, you're coming home, you're making sure you're taking to practice, getting out of the yard. You're actually trying to do, what you're supposed to do is spend some time and actually raise your kid, which is, I think, some of that responsibility thing that was gained later in life, which is an advantage because, you was kind of rebellious when you was younger, as we were talking about, so you settled down.
Well, we all, like I said, we all have those different paths. And it's like I talk about Alan Watts a lot, that philosopher, from the British philosopher. He talks about you can't have an inside without an out. And you can't have the north side of the mountain without the south side of the mountain. And of course, that makes sense to me is that whenever, one of the things that I've tried to do over my life, specifically the last years of my life, whenever I was able to slow down enough to go, wow, I better savor this stuff. I always heard people when I was young talking about slow down and smell the roses. I'm like, yeah, they're great, but they just poke the shit out of me. So I missed the whole point. Whole point, So that when I'm older, like all of us, I think you realize things when you're older. And I'm a Scorpio, so I like sun signs and stuff like that. I'm a number 2, actually 11 or 2, so I throw in the little mystical side of things. I'm like, when I'm 50, which is kind of a 5, it's this dramatic number. It's like this thing that I've never experienced before. And in my particular little weirdo hippie world, it's like vibey. This is like a unity thing, like the year 2022. I mean, it's all this weird. I like to read into stuff that makes me get away from everyday reality of like the world that Tupac describes versus the world that I can live whenever I can read my little books and play baseball and football and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, and you was talking about the mythology and I'm very kind of scientific and science-based and physics and, and I'm like that. But now, I'm also open to, there's a lot of shit that science can't explain that is just in the mystical thing. I just don't read a lot, into it. So, the Scorpio and the signs and the numerology, that's more on your board. And you impress me with your knowledge a lot of times. Of course, now, I'm ignorant enough that you may be just as ignorant as me and just bullshit me. I don't know, but I think you like it and know something about it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
but
I'm
just saying that. Go ahead.
No. Well, I can say this, or we can move on. But I grew up with tarot cards and Linda Goodman's Sun Signs books. I grew up, you were from a married family, and you grew up and you had kids. You're talking about like a bigger story. But I grew up in the 70s as a divorced child with a mother that was, kind of into all kinds of esoteric stuff, and my dad was a Vietnam vet. So, I had a different worldly experience. I mean, these people were like,
right.
My dad was a world traveler whenever I was born, and then
right.
My mom was doing all these things. So it's like, the 60s and just weird shit, Well,
and seeing that kind of goes back to exactly, from the start, we were talking about turning 50 and the differences between how, you personally, it bothered you and me personally. Now, I don't know. I haven't turned 50. I will not say it will never bother me, but I do not be thinking about it doesn't give me anxiety. And, our discussion, how polar opposites really are family life and everything has been, and how polar opposite of, our current discussion turning 50 is, and how well they meet each other. So, I just think that merits a little more discussion, which is why I was trying to bring some of that out, because I think it's very interesting because you're right. I know a lot of your history and mine, and, we discussed it. I've always thought, that's just a weird coincidence,
Yeah. Well, and this is exactly why, like us discussing this, and we even discussed it. We're talking about turning 50, part 1, because there's much more to discuss with turning 50. Because I never did really. I'm going to tell you this. I turned 50 during the height of the pandemic. So at least the spike as far as our area goes. And, of course, it probably would have been different in other ways if I would have done it differently, if I would have been, different earlier or later, whatever. But, like, turning all that and having a kid that was at a young age and, watching – I know you're about 7 or 8 months younger than me, 9 months, whatever. So, like, and that's why I wanted to, you and I have been talking about this from the very beginning. And really about 2 months before I turned 50, or maybe 3 months, 2 or 3 months, which is getting close for you. And I don't think that there's anything magical. I don't think that I was stressed about it. It's like, it's the milestones of it. Whenever you stop, and of course, with me and you both, we're at both of us at a time in our lives where we can stop for a few minutes and reflect upon what all we've done. And we have a sounding board. I mean, we have been friends since fucking kindergarten. And now we're 50, which is 45 years later, and we know each other. We can
right.
explain this whole, obviously, everybody's went in different directions for certain years of life. We've always kept in touch, at least every 3 to 5 years. I mean, even that's sometimes it sounds like a long time, but it's, whenever you're in the middle of life, like some 30-year-olds are right now, they're listening to us, it's different when you're 50, for sure.
Yeah.
And that's what I was trying to say is that it's a milestone.
Well, you're right, and I probably misspoke when I was, speaking in terms of anxiety. I was picking and messing with you. Me and another friend of ours was messing with you because it's not necessarily that you had anxiety, but you were always talking about it, which meant it was on your mind whether you were anxious about it or not. So we took the advantage to pick at you about it, which is, of course, why we do it. But I know we're running a little short on time. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
One quick thing, and I'm gonna let you talk. But y'all also had banana nut bread without me.
Hey. Well, now. That was a trade for the carvings. Now, I can't help that I went and picked it up, and he gave me a bonus. He delivered yours, And then he offered me to go fishing. Come on, man. I still don't think he's asked you to go fishing yet.
Well, he doesn't want to do it because he'll be having to take the fish off the hook for me. He would not want to do with the grandchild.
Yeah, no, you be thinking of going, oh, it's slimy. It's going to poke me. I can see you doing that. Well, I mean,
if I was in that mood, hey, go ahead.
Well, all I was going to say is, I knew we was running a little short on time. And something I was wanting you to just think about maybe for if we get to do a part 2 is like
we are going
being older up in 50, these times, and dealing with teenagers getting out of school and stuff today compared to like when we got out of school. That type thing. Think about it. What are they harder? I mean, what's made it harder or easier for you? I mean, it's something to think about. I don't know. I just think it'd be interesting to ask because I didn't get to do it. I raised mine a lot before this, so Anyhow, all right, man. Well, whatever.
Hey, I think we need to bring other people into this because we've already been talking about this Delphi thing. Can you imagine? We're talking about the best case scenarios for our children. We've been very fortunate. But, there's more complicated scenarios out there, man, even for people our age group. So, hey, man.
Yeah, man.
This is their clip. They should come back and listen to Turning Older or Turning 50 Part 2.
Yeah. When we get it produced, we'll go ahead and do it. Hopefully they enjoyed enough of our BS to come back and try to hear it.
They're coming back to Part 2. All right, over and out.
All right, bud. Talk to you later.